Hi, kindergartners. This week in science, we're going to continue our studies on the Native American people. Some of us also call the people of Native America the Indigenous people, or Indigenous tribes, or Indians. They're all the same thing. We're going to continue talking about some of their traditions. Now, a tradition is something that happens throughout generation, like from grandmother to daughter to grandson. And even when that grandson has a child, it continues to go on, generation after generation. And storytelling is a big tradition in the Native American culture. In the Native American culture, storytelling is how children learned a lot of lessons. Instead of just talking to a child, telling them to do this or do that, a lot of times there were stories to tell the child how to act with their good morals to make good decisions. And I'm going to tell you one story today. Now, a lot of times the parents of these children had to work because, as you know, as we talked about last week, there's a lot of work to be done in a tribe, in a community. We have to find food, hunt and gather. We have to cook, cut firewood in order to cook. We have to keep things tidy and clean so that people don't get sick. There's a lot of going out into the forest and harvesting medicines, plant medicines to keep people healthy. A lot of work to be done. So, who stayed back in the village or the tribe with the children were the elders, the grandparents, the great-grandparents, the great-great-grandparents. And they are older and have a lot of life experience, so they are wise. And there's one story that I particularly like, and I tell my children as well. It's the story of two wolves. And so if you can picture around a fire in the middle of a cold December day, maybe there's a full moon somewhere ready when the sun goes down, maybe not. And the elders are sitting around the fire keeping warm, and the children are too. And maybe one elder tells the story, and maybe a great-great-grandfather. And he tells the children, there are always two wolves within each and every one of you. Me too. There's a very good wolf that likes to make good decisions and do good in the world. And there's a wolf that isn't so good, who makes poor decisions, who does bad things in the world. And they're always fighting. It's a battle that lasts our whole life. The whole life of the person these wolves are fighting. And the grandfather talks about how the good wolf will choose to help a bird that seems like they're hurting. And the bad wolf will choose to ignore the bird and keep walking. Maybe the good wolf will choose to support a friend when they need help. And then the bad wolf will maybe choose to keep playing and not support that friend. There's lots of different examples we can give. And one little child raised their hand and said, well, grandfather, what happens when we die? Which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, the wolf that you feed the most. And that's a story about us choosing to feed the good wolf in ourselves. And that's a story, an oral tradition story, which means it's been handed down from grandfather, great-grandfather, the elders of the community hand it down to the young people. And that continues to happen, and that's been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years. So I thought I'd share that story with you. Another way Native American or Indigenous people or Indians have used storytelling is to explain why things exist. So I don't know if you've ever seen the sky when it's very dark, and you see constellations. That means stars that looks like they're in different shapes. You can ask your parents about the word constellation. later. But there are many stars in the night sky that make shapes that you can see. And there's a story and a symbol of all of them. And this is a story how a lot of the animal constellations were created up in the sky. The animal constellations, each animal has a unique, important meaning. So the coyote animal, the coyote is a trickster, but he's also very creative. He's very tricky, and he is someone, or she is someone that teaches us lessons. The coyote is the lesson teacher. The bear is the protector. The bear is someone that protects. And there are other meanings behind the animals, but you can look those up there later. And also in Native American tradition, the north, the south, the east, and the west, there's a representation of an animal in each of those directions. The north is the bear, the protector, and so on. And we can go on that. We can talk about that a little later. But I'm going to tell you a story about how the coyote places the animal stars in the sky. And it's called The Coyote Places the Stars by Harriet Peck Taylor. Here's the title page. That's where you find the author and the name of the book. Again, The Coyote Places the Stars, retold and illustrated, that means who made the pictures, by Harriet Peck Taylor. And there's a dedication on this book. It says, to stargazers everywhere and to their dreams. Many moons and many moons ago, a coyote lived in a canyon by a swift running river. He spent his days roaming the land, chasing butterflies and sniffing flowers. He lay awake many nights gazing at the starry heavens. One summer night, as he was relaxing in the cool grass with his friend Bear, Coyote had an idea. I think I will climb to the heavens and discover their secrets. Bear scratched his head and asked, how can you do that? I can get up there with no trouble at all, Coyote said. Now Coyote was very skillful with a bow and arrow. He gathered a very large pile of arrows and he began to shoot them at the sky. The first arrow whistled through the air and landed on the moon. Coyote launched a second arrow, which caught in the notch of the first. Whew, went the arrow. Whiz went the next. And on until this long line of arrows made a ladder. Coyote then climbed the ladder. He climbed for many days and nights until he finally reached the moon. He slept all that day as he was very tired. That night, Coyote had another idea. He wondered if he could move the stars around by shooting at them with his remaining arrows. His first arrow hit a star and moved it across the sky. He found he could place the stars wherever he wanted. Coyote wagged his bushy tail and yelped for joy. He was going to make pictures in the sky for all the world to see. First, he decided to make a coyote. So he shot one arrow after another until the stars were arranged in the shape of a coyote. Next, he thought of his friend Bear and placed the stars in the form of a bear. Coyote worked all night creating likeness of all his friends: mountain lion, horse, goat, fish, owl, and eagle. With the stars he had left over, he made a big road across the sky. When he was finished, he began to descend his ladder back to earth. That night, when the bright moon rose in the east, Coyote saw his handiwork and began to howl. Ow, ow, ow! Was carried on the wind through the shadows of the canyon. Birds and animals awoke suddenly and listened to the mysterious sound. It seemed to be a calling to them. From canyons and mesas, hills and plains they came, following the sound. Bears bounded out of their dens, squirrels scampered, and rabbits hibbity-hopped over the hills. Bobcats crept, and bristly porcupines waddled along the trail. Graceful deer moved swiftly, while lizards slowly crawled across the desert. Silvery fish splashed their way upstream. The mighty mountain lion and herds of buffalo joined the journey too. The great eagle soared over moonlight mountains. On and on went the parade of animals, following Coyote's magical voice. Finally, Coyote appeared high on a rock. The animals formed a huge circle and became quiet. Coyote's eyes blazed with pride as he said, "Animals and birds, and all who have gathered here, please look at the sky. You will see the stars are arranged in the shapes of animals. I made a ladder to the moon, and from there I shot my arrows to create the pictures that you see." As the animals looked up, a great chorus of woofing and whiffing, screeching and squawking filled the air. I made a coyote and my friend bear. You will see the mysterious owl, the great eagle, the goat, horse, fish, and the mighty mountain lion. This is my handiwork, and I hope that all who see it will remember Coyote and the animals of the canyon. And here they are looking at them. The animals gave a great feast for Coyote, and they sang and danced through the night. The animals decreed the Coyote was the most clever and crafty of all the animals. Coyote was so grateful that he declared, "I will always be your friend and the friend of your children's children." Now to this day, if you listen closely in the still of the night as the moon is rising, you may even hear the magical howl of the coyote. He is calling to you to go to your window, to gaze at the star pictures, and to dream. Ow, ow, ow! So my friends, that is this week's lesson on a little bit more of Native American culture. We will have 2 more weeks of this culture. It is very important to study different cultures. And at this time of year, when there's a lot of gratitude, I feel like we should look into who was here first and showed us the way of the land. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you soon.